Good evening, everyone. Happy solstice.
Happy solstice.
Hi, Eric.
Wow, what a year we're wrapping up now. I acknowledge you all for being survivors. Particularly with Mars currently in Pisces. Many have been experiencing what I've called the agony of the soul. Pisces is the call of the higher power, the greater compassion that moves us to inspiration, to ecstatic consciousness. The way this Piscean, Neptunian heavenly portal first appears in a person's life is there's a deepening of an agony, a quest, a cry, a call for a greater, higher, more ecstatic state of being, consciousness, or love. Remember that old Bee Gees song, Give Me a Higher Love? One of my all-time favorite songs. That's the theme song of the Piscean portal, the heavenly portal. And with Mars in Pisces, it's been particularly powerful for the last month, and Mars will continue to elevate in frequency through to the very New Year's Eve, when he enters his own sign Aries, dramatically kicking off a whole new cycle of being. These higher octave celestials like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto translate Uranian consciousness, opens the portal to a higher order of consciousness. The Neptunian portal opens the portal to a higher order of being. The Plutonian portal opens the portal to a higher order of empowerment, what I call the singularity of being. You find that single point of power within you, that still point, that stands immovable in the face of all that you experience in this dimension, the gateway to immortality. So the Neptunian portal being a higher order of being, Mars in Pisces is driving himself in quest of the Holy Grail, to experience that elevated state of empathic purpose as a peacemaker. And I have become aware, some of you are aware of others who may have felt like it was their time to leave this world, because the agony of the soul was so profound and deep that they were desperate to break through. I'm going to share with you a personal experience I had of this state of being. I had known this young lady for many years. She'd been a client of mine, and she had done everything she could to heal her brain. It was a brain disorder. And at this certain point, she realized that she could not go any further in this world. So she consciously wrote this beautiful letters to everyone she loved, and then took a leap off the Golden Gate Bridge. My experience of that was quite profound, because I was in contact with her on the other side, and realized that my whole concept or experience of what we call suicide changed. I realized that she was desperate to break through. The agony of the soul was so profound that she didn't know any other way to receive the help that she needed, other than making a leap across the boundary of this world into the next world, and then finally connecting with higher order beings who gave her the help that she needed. So that was a profoundly moving experience for me, and some here have reached that threshold, in this last month or two, where they realize that, wow, I've got to break through. I'm desperate to break through, and even if I need to leap across the boundary from this world into the next, I'm considering it, because I need to have this higher order experience, the love that's pouring out from the source, that is collapsing my own soul into agony, because I know there's a greater and higher love that is beckoning me or calling me with great purpose. Have any of you had that feeling or experience lately? Yeah. Does this explain a little bit of that? Yes. And Mars in Pisces, the warrior who reaches the end of his own personal or physical power, then collapses and surrenders to the greater power that moves through him, and he becomes an agent or of the divine. One of the images for Mars in Pisces is the Knights of the Round Table. They had the sword; they were consummate warriors, but the greater love that they carried was in quest of that higher order of compassion to move through them, be agents of healing for others. And on top of that, the magical quest for a greater love, which was expressed then through Lancelot and Guinevere, I believe. Is that right? Where the warrior found a greater purpose in his own life, or her own life, through the power of love that elevated them to a more ecstatic state of consciousness. So, many of the key words you hear for Neptune are the words associated with that Neptunian process, the agony of the soul, before the breakthrough occurs, before you break through and the gateways to the heavenly worlds open, and you realize that you are now a conduit for that greater love to move through your life and touch the lives of others. This particular portal is increasing in frequency through, like I said, the end of the year. And what is intensifying this experience and giving even greater opportunity is that that Chiron is in the last degrees of Pisces, completing an 8-year circuit through the final sign of the zodiac. Chiron being the great opportunity to find the healing power of suffering in the world, so that we gain an understanding or a deeper understanding of how we act as agents of compassion in the world through the personal experience of wounding or suffering we may have experienced. How many of you are aware of the fact that it's very likely that before you were born as a soul, you chose to have certain experiences that can be translated or experienced as a wound where suffering is involved, that then offers an opportunity for you to explore a deeper, more profound aspect of healing that then you can offer to others. And then it was a soul contract, you were guided to have these experiences as an act of courage, as a giveaway, to learn through direct experience what's required to reach those who are suffering in a particular way in their lives. Once you've gone through that experience yourself and had the personal journey into the depths of that particular aspect of suffering that humanity shares, then you're uniquely qualified to reach those who may share a similar experience as your own, because you've been there and done that. There's no guarantee that you will emerge victorious, and that's why it takes great courage for especially older souls to make that journey into the underworld of their own suffering, and to find the keys. Chiron is connected to the key, turns the lock to the higher potential of your own being. Chiron's been in Pisces for the last 8 years, like I said, and the last time he was in Pisces was during the 60s, during the great spiritual awakening of the baby boomer generation that set the tone for this last 8 years of coming full circle now and understanding a higher level or higher octave of that healing set in motion, through which we become aware of this greater or higher intelligence that moves through us. I always associate these higher order planets, celestials, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, now it's newly discovered celestials, with the dawning awareness of higher order beings that play a great role in our personal and global evolution. Neptune particularly being connected to the angelic realms. So I'm sure each of you have had experiences where you felt like you just reached the end of your rope, there's no way to go forward. And then some miracle happens, apparent miracle happens, where you realize there's been intervention here by a higher order intelligence. This is impossible. This has to be, the only way I can explain this is there's a higher order being who has magically appeared or intervened in my life to open a doorway that I could not myself have personally imagined as the next step in my own evolution. So those of you who are awakening become aware of these higher order beings and their influence and presence in your life and in the lives of others. And so this is the magical opportunity of this window that we're experiencing now, that may be experienced as a test of faith. How deep does your experience, your knowing, your complete awareness of these higher order beings being present in your life, how deeply is it anchored in your soul? Is it a living experience in your life? And because when you reach the limit of your own energy, there's a certain kind of surrender that occurs. And you finally go vertical and ask for help. And we humans are pretty stubborn, so sometimes it takes a lot of pressure in our lives to finally bring us to the point of that surrender where we turn vertical and pray and open our hearts to the intervention of a higher order of being in our lives. And then that's when the magic begins to occur. So in my own chart, having Mars in Pisces, I'm speaking from personal experience here. So 2019, the phrase I was given is the year of liberation. Jupiter has just entered Sagittarius in November, and it's a 12-year. It's been 12 years since Jupiter has entered Sagittarius. His unique position now, though, is that he is squaring Neptune in Pisces. Neptune has been in her own sign since 2012, opening this heavenly portal that I've been speaking of. And Jupiter now, this is a 165-year transit because Jupiter will not square from Sagittarius from it being in his own sign to Neptune being in her own sign for another 165 years. So this is a very unusual and extraordinary opportunity for global awakening. It's been a very challenging year with Jupiter in Scorpio. So we've all had our personal underworld journeys, diving deeply into the meaning and purpose of our lives. There's a German word I associate with Jupiter. It's called Weltanschauung. Anybody aware of that word, Weltanschauung? The way you look out upon the world.
Worldview.
Yeah, your worldview. Welt is world, Anschauung is look upon. It's the way you look out upon the world. And Jupiter is associated with our worldview, what makes sense in our lives, what gives meaning to our lives on a consciousness level. He is in his own sign, and because he's in his own sign, new modalities, new ways of understanding ourselves and the world around us are now appearing and revealing themselves. We're beginning to make sense of the world in a conscious and purposeful way. Jupiter has a very uplifting feeling when he's involved in your life, of expanding your worldview and giving you a new sense of optimism that the world is starting to make sense again. Have any of you started feeling that the world is starting to make sense again? There's an opportunity for that beginning to appear. Jupiter and Neptune have a special relationship to one another because they both co-rule the sign of Pisces. Jupiter is a lower octave of Pisces. And in the olden times, before Neptune was discovered, Jupiter ruled Pisces. Without getting too far into the nuts and bolts of astrology, the whole sequence actually of the unfolding evolutionary cycle between the signs reaches a critical turning point in the sign of Aquarius, with its co-rulership of Uranus and Saturn. Aquarius is the awakening principle of making contact with the higher order intelligences of our team, our guides, a more awakened state of being. If that more awakened state of being, your inner genius, is not awakened, then the Saturnian rulership of Aquarius leaves a human being subject to what I've called cultural sorcery. And they continue to find their place in society, in their communities, Aquarius, by conforming to the dominant cultural spell or sorcery of their country or community. If the Uranian frequencies met, then the genius of that individual awakens, the cultural spell is broken, and they actually have an awakening influence on their culture to open the possibility for the future evolution of themselves, their community, and the world around them. If the Saturnian Aquarian aspect is dominant, then Jupiter will naturally follow in Pisces. And Jupiter in Pisces is associated with all that's considered sacred in established religions. So that a person becomes devoted to a faith that's already been established through sacred texts. And they fail to break through and have that personal relationship with the higher power that Neptune in Pisces actually suggests. The agony of the soul, if it's deep enough, you will find yourself going on a vision quest, a deep dive into the nature of inspiration, the power of love itself. And that avenue builds the Antakarana, or opens the portal to the heavenly worlds, and then leaves you the opportunity to have a personal encounter with the source itself, with a higher order being, that then establishes your own, what we might call, spiritual path. And you're no longer dependent upon the transcendental or transforming experiences of others to be your guide, because most of humanity follows a religion that was established by someone who had a breakthrough, who had their own personal experience of the transcendent. And then others start seeing that, start gathering around them, so it's a little group, and then before you know it, a religion's formed around this one individual's experience, because the individuals involved have not had their own personal encounter with a higher order intelligence, with the source itself. These are the training wheels that then prepare them to have their own personal experience with the divine. And any true master or teacher, or what we might call a guru, just says, "Hey, don't look at me. I'm just helping you, break through." And like Don Juan with Carlos Castaneda, he says, we're just going to both take a leap into the unknown, and your guess is as good as mine as what's going to happen here. I've just been over that precipice a few more times than you have, so I can help you orient. That's a true teacher. So many of us have been on our own personal visionary journey to break through to a more consistent sense of the ecstatic, the higher order of love that maintains itself as a consistent experience in our life. And that power of love being the primary purpose for which you were born. Now, Jupiter squaring Neptune in Pisces, these higher order teachings, awarenesses that overflow from our journey in the underworld this year, we can become quite evangelistic about this new insight we've had, new way of understanding the world around us, that can challenge the deep dive into the Neptunian portal of heavenly ecstatic consciousness, to begin the process of a whole new spiritual path awakening or unfolding that had not yet been achieved yet in our own personal and collective lives. So have you all felt like you've been on a deep dive vision quest this year and really pushed to find that solid ground within you that makes sense of the world? That's the opportunity. The opportunity of 2019 is your consciousness, your awareness of new ways of understanding yourself in the world will just really begin to gel as you share them, especially with others. Now, what's making this particular Jupiter-Neptune square, which by itself would be quite profound, even more powerful, is that it's forming, when two planets form a square with one another, the point where they shake hands is where the particular challenge is resolved. And since Jupiter and Neptune are in mid Sagittarius and mid Pisces throughout these three squares, where they meet is like around 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is the building of community. Like I said, the Saturn-Uranus split here, whether you follow your genius and become a social engineer who's offering new ways of breaking the spell of the dominant cultural hierarchy, or you find yourself diving even deeper, attempting to conform to the dominant culture. So there's a split going on there, depending upon the depth and degree to which you've broken through to a higher order of being. If you've broken through to a higher order of being, you respond to the Uranian genius within you and become a change maker, an enlightener, an awakener. So this midpoint of the square, say this is Jupiter, this is Neptune, Aquarius is here. When you look to the opposite point of a square, of that resolution point, in this case it would be Leo. We have this, what's called Thor's hammer. It's a very powerful astrological signature that can, like Thor's hammer, be very challenging and awakening. And it just so happens that this coming lunar eclipse in January 20th, is right on that 0 degrees Aquarius-Leo axis, right at the midpoint of that Jupiter-Neptune square, and its outcome, where the hammer hits at 0 degrees Leo. So, and this particular lunar eclipse is even more powerful because it's a supermoon lunar eclipse. So not only is it a lunar eclipse, it's a total lunar eclipse supermoon, falling right on the axis of that Jupiter-Neptune square.
Wow. And it's visible here too.
Yeah, and it's going to be visible here. To add even further to that, I've spoken about this newly discovered celestial, Varuna. He's at like 1 degree Leo. So he is at the apex of that Thor's hammer throughout 2019. And this is a 20-year phase of Varuna just having entered Leo this last year fully. The archetype I associate with Varuna in Leo is Aslan, the lion. And what was Aslan known for? Anybody? Yeah, his wisdom, right? Whenever Aslan spoke, everybody listened. It's like, wow, and he spoke in terms that everybody could understand, and there was great wisdom that was associated with Aslan. That's Varuna. Varuna was the creator god of the Hindu, and particularly power connected with the logos, the power of the word to transform. I was recently given this phrase, the sorcery of sound. Sound has a particular sorcery and influence on your consciousness. Varuna was called the god of the wind, which is the carrier of sound. And it's also connected with the spirit expressing itself as sound. And sound then can become conscious and purposeful and formed into words. And that is a particular kind of sorcery. Every word is a packet of energy. And with Leo, it's the full, let's see, I have a phrase here. Yeah, new gods awakening the firelight within. That firelight is the sign of Leo. And with Varuna, because he is beyond the Western iconology. We ran out of Roman gods to plaster onto these newly discovered planets. So it's a kind of a Heyoka trick of the spirit that we were forced, in other words, to invite other gods beyond the Western pantheon into the celestial sphere and acknowledge them. So this is what I'm associating with Varuna and Leo, especially. New archetypes or new gods being introduced to humanity through the ignition or igniting of the firelight within, like an Aslan appearing, walking through your closet door. Whoa. We have this whole new conscious and purposeful way of relating to the divine through the ignition of that tremendous creative fire, the starlight within, the solar logos within. This dominant cultural spell, this unfolding, is becoming so profoundly powerful that the Thor's hammer is saying, who am I within this matrix? Who am I personally as a creative power, as an Aslan in my own life, within this greater matrix that's unfolding, seeming like a huge train just going down the tracks that I can't influence or affect. So the Thor's hammer is saying you have the opportunity to awaken the firelight within in your own creative purpose and to make yourself visible. Leo is the most visible of all the signs as a creative, dynamic participant in the unfolding of this next phase of humanity awakening to its greater destiny. So this 2019 is an opportunity to rededicate yourselves to igniting the firelight within, becoming your own Aslan, becoming the light that shines its brightness in the darkness that you may experience around you, without becoming a planet or being satisfied with being a planet revolving around another sun. Planetary consciousness, if we haven't awakened the firelight within, the solar logos within our own being, we find ourselves in planetary consciousness. A planet revolves around the sun and looks to that sun as its source of its life. So how many times in our life have we felt like this greater light, we needed this greater light to give us life because we hadn't ignited our own creative fire. So we become a follower of some greater light. It can be a movie star or a rock musician or a teacher of some kind, because we have not yet come to the point where we've ignited our own solar fire and realized that we are in the position of sharing that light and brightening and lighting up the world, no matter how dark it gets around us. There's a consistent awakening or power that you begin to wield within yourself or experience within yourself that becomes a source of that light rather than needing to have that light given to you or received from another. And that's a gradual dawning brilliance that awakens within you. So the difference between, you'll experience this in your own life, that you've really begun to step into that solar fire, that you don't feel like you're revolving around someone else's life any longer. You can really, if two suns come together and form a constellation or more suns, they form this beautiful pattern in the sky. Because once you awaken your own starlight, then you call in others with whom then you can form a constellation of lights. And you enjoy this and celebrate each other's personal power and creativity without any one needing to revolve like a planet around the other. And then it becomes a victory dance. So any questions or comments at this point? Go ahead.
Clarify on Thor's hammer and that configuration with, I didn't quite catch it with Jupiter and Neptune square. I didn't quite catch that.
The Jupiter and Neptune are square,
Yeah.
and then the Leo point down here.
The Jupiter's in Sagittarius and Neptune's in Pisces.
Yeah, and Leo would be opposite their midpoint, because they, like I said, they meet at Aquarius, zero Aquarius.
Yeah.
So it's, if you imagine this square, then the midpoint's Aquarius, and then right opposite to it is Leo. So it goes like that. It's similar to a yod, but it's actually it's a square that forms the top two celestials.
Kind of looks like a peace sign.
Like a fork, you know, like a.
Kind of looks like a peace sign.
Yeah, yeah, and another way to viscerally experience that is like imagining a divining rod. Have any of you ever held a divining rod? You feel the tension there, and how it then just focuses through the rod, and you can actually pick up energy with it. It's that tension that gives the divining rod its power, and that's all pointing toward Leo. And with this lunar eclipse, an especially dramatic punctuation point mark to the appearance of the Lion King, or Aslan, in our own lives, or the world searching for the appearance of a Prince of Heaven, a Leonine king. That may appear to be a singular event, but that lunar eclipse establishes the frequency of initiation for the next 6 months until the following solar and lunar eclipses in July. So this will carry over, and especially since Jupiter and Neptune will continue to go in and out of square all year. And Varuna is a very slow-moving celestial. The Jupiter square Neptune sesquiquad. Jupiter and Neptune are sesquiquad, Varuna and Leo, creating the Thor's hammer. Will be active all year. There are certain points where it'll be more precise than others, but because these celestials are such slow-moving planets, it'll basically be in effect all year. So wherever you have mutable signs in your chart, planets in mid-mutable signs, or near the 0 point of the fixed signs in your chart, those particular celestials in your chart will be most activated as an avenue to express this Thor's hammer. Any other comments or questions at this point? Yeah, January.
It happens 3 times next year?
Yeah.
The square, the exact square?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the threefold Jupiter-Neptune square. The first exact square will be January 13th. And then I believe it's July. June 16th is the retrograde square, and then the final square will be September 21st of 2019. But because they're such slow-moving celestials, they'll basically be remaining in orb of the square all year.
So those people that have planets within small orb of, like, say, the 0 point, the 1 degree Leo,
Yeah.
will be affected that much
Mhm.
more.
Yeah, and 0 degrees, 1 degree, it's like 0 to 5 degrees of the fixed signs. And even adding to that even further, if that wasn't enough, many of you know that Uranus is also entering Taurus 0 degrees, squaring Varuna and the midpoint between the Jupiter-Neptune axis. So this is like a double Thor's hammer. So talk about dynamic change, Thor being the god of thunder and lightning. This is like a thunder and lightning storm, with a tremendous amount of energy being released. So if you have the courage to show up and become visible to others, don't be surprised if it creates a little lightning and thunder. That's part of the opportunity of this particular combination. Okay? Um, and January is quite an awesome month. As many of you may be sensing already, if Mars entering 0 degrees Aries on New Year's Eve, that by itself would be, whoa, it's like all the lights get turned on, and it's like time to move forward, but that's just one small part of it. 2019 is also a significantly powerful year of transformation and turning points, because we have 2 solar eclipses and 3 lunar eclipses, very unusual, during 2019. The signs emphasized are Cancer and Capricorn, which is about the ancestry, your roots, the place you stand, versus the place you stand at full height as an adult in the world, manifesting your particular career, or what I call medicine. Career is just a means through which you channel your medicine into the world in a meaningful way. So that whole axis is being really emphasized throughout the year, and which makes this coming the full moon lunar eclipse even more unusual, because it's in Leo, 0 Leo, 0 Aquarius, outside the pattern of the other dominant eclipses and solar and lunar eclipses. So we're starting out January with in the dark of the eclipse, with the moon in Scorpio right over the New Year's, and Mars is having entered Aries. So it's sort of like a breaking point that we reach, where we realize we can't stand still any longer. That we need to begin to have the courage to move forward in the world, and making a break from the past. The solar eclipse occurs on the 5th of January, 5:28 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time at 15.5 Capricorn. And then it quickly as we know, Saturn and Pluto are already in Capricorn, have been. So this solar eclipse falls at kind of the midpoint, right between Saturn and Pluto, making it even more powerful. And through this first week of January, so the Sun will conjunct Saturn on January 1st, and then be crossing the distance between Saturn and Pluto all the way through to January 11th, when it reaches Pluto. And right in the middle of that 11-day window or 10-day window, we have the solar eclipse right in the middle of it. Friday the 4th, the moon moves into Capricorn around 11 a.m. So we'll begin to really feel the depth of the pressure building to stand in our own power. Capricorn is about your full adult nature. Capricorn rules the spinal column, your skeleton. It's what enables and empowers you to stand up straight in your own adult nature, in your own integrity, to rise to your full stature. So the Capricornian pressure, just like a dad would tell you, is you got to rise to your full potential and make something of yourself in the world. Right? It's the father power. We've all been feeling that challenge since 2008, when Pluto went into Capricorn, and now it's coming into full view as we are all challenged to take our place in the world. Saturn, as I've mentioned before, is connected with the dominant cultural sorcery, and how we engage with it and find our place within it without losing our own soul or purpose. Those of us who have a particular genius, who have in one way or another had the spell of the dominant culture broken, then may find ourselves moving way out ahead of others, too far, and not being able to return. to the point where you can integrate or relate to the dominant cultural matrix.
Those are called revolutionaries.
Yeah, yeah, and just realize that, whoa, you know, I need to reel back in so I can make a difference in the world, and not get lost or move out so far beyond others around me that they can't relate to me in a meaningful way. So this Capricorn matrix is saying the world is still standing. It's a dominant cultural matrix. It has a tremendous influence on your life and the lives of others. And by integrating with it, without losing your soul or compromising your integrity, Saturn, you can then work from the inside to actually begin to work transformations that you could not do, being so distant or separated from the dominant cultural matrix that they considered you, way out, as the hippies would put it. So this dilemma between being true to ourselves, being true to the genius we are, and knowing that we need to speak in the language of the dominant culture is really kind of a pivot point of January, particularly with the solar eclipse, and those who are seeking to promote or advance their influence on the world around them with the creative gifts and talents that they carry. To make this particular eclipse and transit even more powerful, not only is the Sun conjuncting Saturn and Pluto through that 10-day period, but he is also what's called parallel. In other words, he's not just longitudinally conjunct, he's at the same height above the celestial sphere as Saturn and Pluto. So this creates an extremely powerful conjunction, more powerful than usual. It's like the arrow really hitting the bullseye. Venus enters Sagittarius on the 7th, which gives us some wings. I associate Jupiter and Sagittarius with Pegasus, the flying horse, the horse being our conscious awareness of the greater destiny we carry and how to carry that out to others. So there's an uplift that begins on the 7th after the solar eclipse. And Jupiter and Pluto are also parallel one another. So the Sun parallels Jupiter and Pluto. At the same time, he conjuncts Saturn and Pluto throughout the first of the year, throughout the 11th of January. And then the second week of January, Mercury, having entered Capricorn on the 4th, the day before the eclipse, will have reached Saturn on the 13th of January, and then Pluto on the 18th of January. Heading in right into the lunar eclipse on the 20th of January. So we can see that that first 2 weeks heading up to the eclipse on the 20th is extraordinarily powerful. And it'll be interesting to watch how the United States of America responds to this, particularly with the convening of this new Congress. Nancy Pelosi being in the lead here, a Sun in Aries, Mars conjunct her Sun right after the New Year, for the important opportunity for misuses of power being called to account. You know, our Congress and our president and congressional leaders may seem far removed from us, but they're actual symbols of the archetype of America and how well it's doing on a global level, as a reflection of the spirit of America. Every country has a spirit associated with it. And the spirit of America is symbolized or archetypalized through the President of the United States. It's not so much from my point of view what the President does or doesn't do, but it's the archetype of the state of consciousness, his beingness, that creates an example for others to either admire or be repelled by. So that particular archetype, Saturn, Capricorn, is being called to account throughout the month of January. And guess who's going to be in charge of setting that process in motion? Our newly embodied House of Representatives will be the active arm of that, of the American sense of integrity and the right or wrong use of power being called to account. So we can use that as a reflection of in our own personal lives, if we are in a position of responsibility or influence, particularly if we have businesses of our own or our community leaders of those younger Mars and Aries, then we are the next generation, especially Mars and Aries, calling us to account for the right or wrong use of our position of responsibility. On the positive side, this is a tremendous opportunity for us to experience our adult nature. How many of you feel like most of the human beings running around on this planet are just little kids looking for mom and dad? Well, the nature of this challenge, this portal, this initiation globally, is saying that all adults are now being called to duty. To find the adult within you that broadens his or her shoulders and is comfortable carrying that added pressure of being responsible for those younger than yourself. This is not in chronological age, this might be in soul age. To take your position as an adult with integrity, to do your part, to give your medicine, to know that it's your time now to take your place in an influential manner, to be a part of this global awakening and transformation. So if you're feeling a little pressure on your shoulders, know that that's the adult speaking in you saying, okay, I can handle this. Yeah. I no longer need to shy away from the consequence of my influence over others, because I've learned how to handle power with integrity. Once you're clear that your power is integralist, then you no longer fear having an influence on others around you, because you know that you are aligned with the greater purpose of your being, with the higher power, in the influence you're having on others. And then you can take your place, do your part, and then let go. So broaden your shoulders and get used to the pressure, because it's our time to step forward and be the adults in the room. Any questions or comments at this point? Go ahead.
Well, you've mentioned the conjunction and the parallel between Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter a few times, and this will really come into full conjunction in the beginning of 2020, around 20 Capricorn.
Yeah, the Saturn Pluto
conjunction. I view that Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn and Pluto all conjunct then.
Yeah, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto
Yeah.
will all conjunct each other in 2020, which is the very thing I was just going to talk about.
Oh.
So thank you.
So it's kind of off topic, but a couple of times today we've mentioned Atlas, the Titan, and how you're talking about the pressure on the shoulders.
Aslan.
Atlas, the Titan Atlas.
No,
The one
I was
that holds
talking.
the world on the shoulders.
Oh yeah, okay. So you're talking about Atlas as a symbol of that pressure.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm just seeing the synchronicities tying together here.
Yeah, that would be an apt symbol for it. The pressure that Atlas felt holding up the world. But that's the dark side of that pattern, because you feel that's your personal responsibility to fix the world or to hold it up. when you've broken through to, because Saturn is the father principle, when you've broken through to the Father in heaven, the higher order, that moves through you in a directed way, where you have an influence then as an agent of the divine, you realize that you only understand or perceive a small part of the greater destiny of people around you or the world at large, and that you're not ultimately responsible for the outcome. So that, you then can let go of that pressure of feeling like you have to fix or change or heal someone else, because in the long run, you only offer opportunities, like a good father would. Whether that opportunity is taken is really none of your business. So you're not responsible for the outcome. So that pressure of Atlas on his shoulders is lightened down, and you realize that everyone in the world is holding up the world with you. And you're not there as a singular God responsible for making sure the world is held up. I'm sure some of you have felt that at times where you felt like it was your personal responsibility to save the world. And then you realize, whoa, wait a minute, I can work with others, and maybe the whole human race is responsible for the outcome, and I don't have to take on that added pressure of feeling like I need to be the savior of the world.
I think that's one big ego.
Yeah, it's a younger stage of our evolution, and but we're all evolving. But the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, those that you mentioned, it's a 20-year cycle, and curiously enough, for the last 200 years, the Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions, which establish the next wave of cultural developments, it's like a 20-year phase of developments that's marked by the nature of the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, have all been on the sign of Earth since 1802. It's a 200-year window being an Earth of the material age. This particular next Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is at 0 degrees of Aquarius, beginning another 200-year phase of these Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, establishing cultural evolution and the wave of culture in the air signs, which I have suggested is the beginning of the true age, era of awakening of consciousness, because air is connected to consciousness. So this, having mentioned that, I'm going into this somewhat because it's so important. Normally a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction marks just another 20-year phase, but this next Jupiter and Saturn conjunction marks the completion of this 200-year phase of the Earth element being emphasized, the age of materialism, which the United States of America has become a huge symbol of. In 1802, the Louisiana Purchase overnight doubled the size of the United States, and the movement of manifest destiny got set in motion, with the Westerners moving out across this incredible expanse that they just inherited, and feeling like their manifest destiny was just to take over and take charge and remove those who weren't Christians. And so the consequence of that over the last 20 years has really been coming full bore, because it's the end of the 200-year material age. And these Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunctions in the last year of it is such a perfect punctuation capstone of the entire process of not just 200 years, but thousands of years of human history, really coming into full view, showing its dark side, knowing that the material age is really now collapsing as an ideal, and a whole new level of consciousness, and are cooperating with one another, Aquarius, to build new models of culture, really beginning to emerge into the 2020s. So this is a really, this is like the 2019 is a bridge year with Jupiter and Sag in his own sign, to really get clear on a very high level of what the greater unity really translates into, and how we can come together through global understanding of how we're all related, so that when Capricorn 2020 follows, we build in a responsible way, in a more conscious way that unites us all rather than divides us. Did you have something to say, Garen?
For the Americas, the Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction, the last time we had one was 1786.
Okay.
So the Constitution and all this.
Yeah, and Pluto was in Aquarius then, yeah. And since the United States of America is a Sagittarius rising country, Jupiter hasn't quite transited over its ascendant yet, starting a whole new 12-year phase of its own conscious evolution. And Jupiter will be won't quite retrograde back to its the 12th house. So see, Jupiter, U.S.'s ascendant is like 13 Aquarius, Sag, 13 Sag. So that would be in January, second week of January. And whenever Jupiter crosses your ascendant, any celestial crosses your ascendant, it's like a rebirth. It's like the beginning of a whole new phase of being, the first house. And so Jupiter crossing the U.S. ascendant begins a whole new 12-year expansive cycle of what freedom and liberation look like. The whole mantra of America's liberty, right? Jupiter and Sag. That's the Sagittarian impulse, is liberty. So understanding what liberty really looks like and is experienced as a people, as a lighthouse to the world, really begins in January with the convening of this new Congress. So I'm really fascinated with the sparks that will start flying in January. Yeah.
Or today.
Yeah, but Mars is still in Pisces, and it will conjunct Chiron on the 29th of December. So the last phases of this, what I call the agony of the soul, are unfolding now, so that we, establish proper conscious relationship to the higher order intelligences that are attempting to make contact with us, so that whatever actions we take, whatever dramatic forward momentum begins to unfold in January, will be divinely directed. We maintain contact with this higher order of inspiration that moves us in the world, without losing contact with the higher order of intelligences that are attempting to awaken us and the world around us. So this is an excellent time for prayer, to remain vertical, and to really become aware of how, especially in the dream state, the dream time, Neptune looks primarily through the dream time, you're being shown visions and given deeper inspiration for the actions that will follow in January.
Hey, Eric.
Go ahead.
Going back to what you were just saying about this long-term, this 200-year cycle of Jupiter and Saturn, and now shifting into the air signs, which is I see a major potential expression of that as being that we'll see the first real initiatory missions to Mars with the intention of human colonization happening 2021, 2022. And I know, that to some people that might seem superficial or something in the context of when everything's happening on Earth, but I don't see it that way. I see that this is the beginning of a really long-term scale extension of what we even consider ourselves as humanity, because this will be the initiation as a multi-planetary species. The species who's now going out into the air. We're going out into the Aquarian realm of space. And in a similar way, in the way that the United States of America was a new paradigm of crossing the oceans, escaping the predominant paradigm of England, all that, and then starting so fresh in so many ways with democracy, all the new philosophy and social systems. I think this will be something similar, but perhaps even on an even larger scale, where the first settlers will be really free to act outside of the Saturn conditioning that has been on Earth for so very, very long. I think that could be part of the next 200-year cycle, where we'll have.
So how far do you want to go with this? Do we have, are we running out of time here? Are we doing okay on time?
Yeah, we're about out of time.
We're about out of time. I was going to go for another level, but we're about
That
out
works
of time.
That works unless there's already inhabitants, which, clearly there have been.
Yes.
And so then they're the Indians and we're the Christians again.
Well, in
I don't know if
January,
that's a big deal.
in January, the Martians are going to be visiting us, so it's going to be
Yeah,
very
so
Mars-like.
they're gonna
Yeah.
have something to say about us moving.
But just briefly, because I know we're running out of time. Doing the charts of some recently born children, a portal into the future was blown open. I was hardly even able to find words for it.
Mm.
And I was being shown the culmination of the Atlantean and Lemurian
Right.
ancient archetypes, primarily astral, coming into full view now with the Capricornian patriarchal era being capstoned by what's called the Capricorn climax in 2020, and then the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 Aquarius 12/21/2020, exactly 8 years after 2012, beginning to open the portal to the culmination of the Atlantean state of consciousness, high technology. Atlantean consciousness is the mind of God. It's the greater intelligence, the genius that creates high technologies. And then Pluto entering Aquarius through the 2020s into the 2030s, being the culmination of the Atlantean high technology frequency state of consciousness, with singularity, global singularity on the AI side being achieved around 2045, or really 2040s, when Pluto enters Pisces and the Lemurian archetype then begins to finally emerge as the full embodied transition between the Atlantean high consciousness, technology consciousness, mind of God, to the Lemurian Pluto-Neptune heart of God. The Lemurian frequency is the heart of God. So this whole period of time is a transition and melding and marriage from Atlantean, first from the patriarchal era that's been established for the last 2,000 years, to the high Atlantean, which is the emergence of the technologies again. And then in the 2040s to the Lemurian heart of God portal that brings it all home and into a heightened, fully conscious human evolutionary cycle. And that's what I was seeing in these children's charts, because they're just getting started and coming in now. And I've heard this from a couple other people as well about their children. It's kind of blowing me away. I'm struggling to find words for it, because we can't even imagine fundamentally what's going to start really unfolding, especially from the mid-20s onward. So, but we have a couple years here to anchor into our soul history the dark and the light of this 200-year material age, so we aren't tempted to repeat that same mistake or pattern in the foundation of what's to come. Okay, and so that's why these next couple of years are so consequential, particularly the United States of America this year being awakened as the shining light on the hill, for better or worse. Okay, any final comments or questions?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
At the very beginning of your talk, you read something off your paper, and you said, "Oh, next year is the." I forgot.
This year,
this
coming
coming
2019 is the
is
year of
gonna be
liberation.
the year where like if this was the struggle year, then next year is the
Liberation.
Year of liberation.
Oh,
Yeah. It's already started, but
I think you also used the phrase bridge, but it's a bridge.
yeah, it's a bridge to 2020. Yeah. So it's a special time to really enjoy your freedom, your liberty, especially if you are a world traveler, and to explore interchange with other cultures that awaken you and break the cultural spell, the dominant cultural spell of this country, to expand your horizons, and to really enjoy the freedom of living a life that's well lived. Because by 2020, the real work kicks in. It's like we're all going to be called to duty big time. So, anyone else? Have we done it for the evening?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Much love.